Okay, let's talk about one of the most frustrating things in all of personal finance. You know the moment. You're doing everything you're supposed to. You pay your bills on time, you pay them in full, and then the system just punishes you for it. In this explainer, we're going to crack the code on this credit score paradox and figure out why your score can drop even when you're being perfectly responsible. Right? This is the core question. It's not a trick question. It happens to people all the time, and it feels completely backwards. It makes you wonder, why? Well, it's because there's a hidden rule in the credit game that, honestly, almost nobody tells you about. So let's investigate exactly how this whole thing works. So let's set the stage. Picture this. You've been planning a big purchase. Maybe it's a new couch, maybe a plane ticket for a vacation you've been saving for. You put $2,000 on your credit card, which has a $5,000 limit. No problem, right? You've got the cash sitting in your bank account ready to pay it off. And the second that bill hits your email, you are on it. You log into your account and you pay off the entire $2,000 balance. Boom, done. You pay zero interest. By any and every definition, you are the perfect customer. You're the kind of responsible borrower any bank would dream of having. And then comes the punchline to the joke you didn't know you were in. A few days later, you get that dreaded alert. Your credit score has dropped. Maybe it's 15 points, maybe it's 25 points. You did absolutely nothing wrong, but your score went down anyway. So what on earth is going on? To figure this out, we have to pull back the curtain. All right, section 1 is what I call the snapshot secret. And this right here is the first huge piece of the puzzle. It turns out the entire credit reporting system isn't what we think it is. It's not actually watching our finances in real time. This right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the misunderstanding. We all just assume that the credit bureaus are watching a live movie of our financial lives. But they're not even close. What they're looking at is a single photograph, a snapshot, that's taken just once a month. And here's the kicker. That photo is almost always taken at the worst possible moment. This timeline lays the whole trap bare. See, we've all been trained our whole lives to focus on one thing, the due date. But the date that actually matters for your credit score is the statement closing date. That's the day the bank takes a snapshot of your account and sends it to the credit bureaus. And look where it is. It happens weeks before your payment is even due. So the system sees that big $2,000 balance, thinks you're a risk, and dings your score for a debt you were always going to pay off. Okay, on to section 2, the 30% weight. So we now know the system reports our balance before we even have a chance to pay it. But why does that matter so much? I mean, why does a temporary high balance cause such a huge immediate drop in our score? Well, it all comes down to one single incredibly important factor. And that factor is called credit utilization. It sounds fancy, but it's just simple math. How much you owe divided by how much credit you have. In our earlier example, that $2,000 balance on a $5,000 limit card, that's 40% utilization. And that number, 40%, is exactly what sets off the alarm bells in the credit scoring algorithm. So, why is this one number so incredibly important? Well, just look at this breakdown of a FICO score. Yeah, payment history is number 1, we all know that, but look at what's right behind it, amounts owed. At a whopping 30% of your score, this piece of the pie is almost entirely about your utilization. Just think about that for a second. It's weighted more heavily than how long you've had credit. A single month of high utilization can temporarily wipe out years of good history. It's insane. And you gotta understand, the scoring models are really sensitive. There are these invisible cliffs. Once you cross 30% utilization, you start to look like a risk. If you go over 50%, the algorithm basically sees a crisis in the making. And if you get anywhere near 90 or 100%, your score can go into an absolute freefall. The system just sees that high percentage as a huge red flag that you're more likely to default, so it drops your score immediately to reflect that new, perceived risk. But, and this is the most important part, and it's fantastic news, unlike a late payment, which will haunt your credit report for 7 long years, utilization has no memory. At least, not in the most common scoring models. So if you have 90% utilization reported in January, yeah, your score is going to tank. But if you get it to report at just 5% in February, your score will bounce right back up, as if that 90% never even happened. And that brings us to section 3, the statement date hack. So if the damage isn't permanent, and if it's all based on a single snapshot in time, well, that means we can control what the camera sees. This is how you flip the script. This is how you take back control from the algorithm. The strategy is surprisingly simple.
Instead of paying after the bill is generated, you pay before. Step 1. Go find your statement closing date. It's on your statement. Ignore the due date for a second. Step 2. A few days before that closing date, pay off almost your entire balance. You can leave just a tiny amount, like $10. Step 3. Let the statement close. The bank reports that super low balance. Then, for step 4, you just pay off that last little bit by the actual due date. Bam. You've just controlled the data. You told the credit bureaus exactly what you wanted them to see.
Okay, so once you've mastered that basic technique, there are a few expert-level details and some really common mistakes that you absolutely need to know about. Now, get ready for one of the most surprising twists in this whole story. Your goal isn't actually to report a $0 balance. I know, it sounds completely crazy, but the FICO algorithm can actually penalize you slightly for looking like you're not using credit at all. See, the model wants to see that you can manage debt responsibly, and if you just report 0 month after month, it has no current data to score. It's wild. And this is where we need to be crystal clear on the language. Reporting a balance is not the same thing as carrying a balance. Reporting a balance just means your statement is generated with, say, $10 on it. You then pay that $10 in full by the due date, and you pay 0 interest. Carrying a balance is when you don't pay that $10 in full, and it rolls over, and that's when it starts costing you money. So to be clear, we want to report a small balance, but we never, ever want to carry one. Now, for those of you out there who are about to apply for a huge loan, like a mortgage, and you need every single point you can get, there's a pro-level strategy. It's called All Zero Except One, or AZO. You use the statement date hack to make sure all of your credit cards report a 0 balance, all except for one. On that one card, you let it report a tiny amount, like 1% of its limit. This combination basically screams to the algorithm that you are an active but extremely low-risk borrower. But please be careful to avoid these common traps. First off, autopay is your enemy in this strategy. It's always timed for the due date, which, as we now know, is way too late. Second, whatever you do, don't close your old credit cards. That old credit limit is the denominator in your utilization math, and getting rid of it can make your percentage spike. And finally, avoid something called credit cycling. That's maxing out and paying off a card multiple times in a single month. Banks really don't like that. They see it as super risky and might even close your account. So when you put all of these pieces of the puzzle together, a completely new picture emerges. You realize the credit score system isn't just this mysterious thing that happens to you. It's a system whose inputs you can actually directly manage. You see that feeling of frustration, of being unfairly punished? It just comes from not knowing the real rules of the game. But the biggest takeaway here is this. The system isn't personal. It's not out to get you. It's just bureaucratic. It runs on a simple, predictable schedule. And once you understand that schedule, you completely change your position. You switch from being a victim of the algorithm to being the manager of your own financial data. You're no longer asking, hey, why did my score drop? Instead, you're asking, what score do I want to report this month?